Hey there everyone, I'm meteorologist Cassie Nall, and this is your 10 weather impact recap for the week. Let's start with a look at some of the top weather stories from around the country. The first tornado in East Tennessee in 2026 touched down in Claiborne County on Friday. An EF0 tornado with winds of 85 miles per hour destroyed the front of Duncan Lumber in New Tazewell. The storm damaged the roof of the more than century-old business and forced walls to collapse. The path of the tornado was about 1.5 miles in length and around 75 yards wide. Thankfully, there were no reports of injuries with that storm. In Atlanta, heavy rain turned roads into rivers during the evening rush hour last Wednesday. Many drivers were stranded on the interstates as floodwaters rose quickly. Flash flooding caused and created dangerous travel conditions in the metro, but the story everyone was talking about after the water receded was a self-driving car that drove straight into the floodwaters. Waymo is a company that brings robo-taxis to big cities, including Atlanta. Like any new technology, these driverless vehicles have had their pros and cons, but after one of the autonomous vehicles drove straight into a flooded intersection at a high rate of speed during last week's flash flooding, Waymo has suspended services in Atlanta. The company says it is working to update software to improve performance around construction zones and flooded roadways. Waymo expects to resume those routes soon. And days after that flash flood event in Atlanta, thousands of fish were found dead in the Chattahoochee River downstream from the city. Michael Dunda takes us to the river and shares the impacts from last week's rain event.
This river is a huge part of my life, and I've dedicated my life to protecting this river system. I grew up on this river.
For riverkeeper Jason Olseth, the Chattahoochee is a special place full of life, but Friday morning, he found something else.
I've been patrolling this stretch of river weekly for 20 years, never seen anything like it.
For 20 miles downstream of the Chattahoochee River National Recreational Area, Jason Olseth found the banks coated in black muck and thousands,
big old pile of them,
and thousands of dead fish.
I've never seen that out here. I've never seen a fish kill of this magnitude ever.
Olseth says after the massive flash flooding on Wednesday, some sewage overflowed into the river, causing the oxygen levels to drop.
But when the oxygen crashes like that, there's nowhere to hide.
Essentially, every species of fish in that stretch of the Chattahoochee suffocated, leaving a place usually full of nature practically lifeless.
The oxygen levels are now returning, but the damage is done.
Friday afternoon, Georgia's Department of Natural Resources took to the river to take samples of the fish and water, trying to figure out exactly what happened and see what can be done in the future.
It'll be a matter of figuring out exactly what the cause was and making sure we get this fixed so it never happens again.
In Utah, Governor Spencer Cox has declared a state of emergency for the state due to ongoing drought conditions. The declaration activates the state's emergency operations plan and encourages voluntary water conservation across all sectors.
We are coming off a winter that was the warmest on record by nearly 3 degrees. Unfortunately, these above normal temperatures are expected to continue through the summer.
According to the governor, snowpack provides 95% of Utah's water supply. So with record low snow numbers from the winter season, drought conditions continue to expand and worsen. All 29 counties in the state are currently experiencing severe drought, with 22 having extreme drought. Although reservoir storage remains at 70% capacity thanks to careful management during wetter years, that water supply is being drawn down quickly, and the governor encourages everyone in Utah to conserve water as much as possible. In Northern California, 2 massive reservoirs are nearly 90% full, putting them in excellent shape heading into the summer months. Shasta Lake and Trinity Lake are both near capacity, providing promising conditions for recreation and water storage, despite concerns over California's low snowpack this year.
Well, thinking of what the purpose of Shasta Dam is almost like a bank account, right? We're storing the water when it's falling to when we need it most when it's not. So like any bank account, if you draw down your funds, you always have to replenish them before the next year so you can go on vacation again. Starting the summer with a really full Shasta reservoir is just fantastic. That being said, with the amount of snow we didn't get this year, we may have to draw down the lake lower than normal just because we need to fulfill those downstream needs.
Now to Southern California and the wildfire recovery efforts touted as the fastest disaster cleanup in American history. But questions are being raised about what was left behind, with some saying the cleanup was rushed or even botched. Steve Patterson shares the concerns from those involved.
In burn-battered Altadena, homes are beginning to rise from the ashes.
When I look at our property, it's still home.
Caroline Chacon plans to rebuild too, but worries about what's been left behind.
It looks like you can still see the fire damage left on the pavement.
Absolutely.
Chacon says that her lot was never properly cleaned by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and points to a fire-charred patio, a sinkhole that formed after her lot was cleared, and parts of her home's foundation as proof. She says she'll have to pay for the debris removal herself and worries about toxins potentially leaching from them that could be lingering in the soil.
There's always going to be the concern of what is left behind. At the end of the day, they did not do a good job.
Chacon is one of hundreds of residents who submitted cleanup complaints to an Army Corps hotline, according to documents obtained by NBC News. Many of them critical of the agency for failing to remove the remnants of what's now in plain sight: fire-singed driveways, walls, and foundations.
I've covered nearly every major wildfire in California over the last 10 years, and following a cleanup effort, I have not seen this much concrete debris still intact. It's something workers we spoke to say they find shocking here as well. How atypical is that amount of material left behind compared to what you've seen before?
It's so excessive.
For the first time, we're hearing from two workers directly involved with the cleanup effort, subcontractors who took orders from the Corps, agreeing to speak to us as long as we hid their identities.
We left cracked walls, cracked driveways that had contaminants left in them, or even burnt plastic. Those are all still contaminants that should have not been left behind.
The workers tell us that agency orders about what they could remove changed multiple times.
One property, you're doing one thing, and then they change things, and then it's something totally different.
They say those sudden shifts contributed to an inconsistent and substandard cleanup.
Were corners cut?
I would say corners were cut as far as the higher-ups who were giving these directives. I think they were trying to just rush the job.
Recent data from researchers at UCLA appears to support what the workers and many people there fear: that cleanup was done hastily without quality control, and that lead levels on nearly 20% of cleared lots in Altadena still exceed state safety standards. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers tells us soil testing was not part of the mission assigned by FEMA, and its mission evolved based on what was learned in the field. Adding, the integrity and safety of our fire debris removal operations was the highest priority, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers addressed every reported concern throughout the process. The unknown of what remains still weighs heavily on these workers.
I think it's important that the community knows what they're coming back to. If it's not good enough for my family, it's not good enough for anyone else.
You wouldn't let your family move back to this?
Nope. If I didn't clean this property myself, absolutely not.
Regret for a job that felt unfinished, and concern for what might come next. Steve Patterson, NBC News, Altadena, California.
In New Jersey, you might have a tougher time this year finding peaches. That's because the hot weather and then a cold snap hit farms hard in the Garden State, which is the fourth largest producer of the fruit. Adam Harding has the story.
These little peaches from the inside here are going to keep growing bigger.
Rebecca Alstead-Modry is the second-generation owner of this farm in Chester.
So what you're seeing right here is actually the outside of a peach flower.
They grow just about everything here, including peaches, but farmers statewide say they're especially concerned about their crop supply this season, thanks to how moody Mother Nature's been.
The freeze that we had the middle of April was challenging.
Workers say it simply got too hot too fast last month, followed immediately by a deep freeze that wouldn't let up.
So this is one of the remnants of a peach flower that was damaged in the freeze.
And while this farm is thankful they didn't lose more of their crop, others weren't as lucky.
The peach industry is definitely struggling. South Jersey lost about 70 to 80% of their peaches.
And with the picking season just a few weeks away, it's fair to say things aren't exactly looking peachy out there.
I think what you're going to end up seeing this summer is a lack of New Jersey peaches, and you're probably going to see some price inflations because of that, because of the limited supply of peaches throughout the state.
This is the worst year in a couple of decades.
Daniel Ward is a Rutgers professor who specializes in fruit crops.
New Jersey typically has more moderate changes in the spring and not those widely fluctuating temperatures that we experienced this year, with really warm, a stretch of really warm days that really pushed ahead the development of plants, followed by that sudden, really cold night that was like, maybe 24, 25 degrees in a lot of the state for many hours.
So I think there's a lot of room for our year outlook to change.
Farm workers say it's too early to write the season off. They hope as the weather turns, so too does their outlook.
Every day we find more peaches, we find more flowers that are becoming actual fruits, but we're definitely seeing a loss, but we're also definitely seeing some peaches on here that we're going to be able to have to sell and to have for our pick your own.
In western North Carolina, heavy rain over Memorial Day weekend caused flash flooding and damage in areas still recovering from Hurricane Helene. Bat Cave is a small community to the southeast of Asheville, and in September of 2024, catastrophic flooding from Helene destroyed much of the infrastructure and cut the area off to the outside world for days. More than a year and a half later, many people are still living in temporary housing while rebuilding, and this weekend's rain washed away some of those efforts. The land in these areas is now more vulnerable to flash flooding and mudslides during heavy rain events after the impacts from Helene, and volunteers are still working hard to help communities and the landscape recover. Elijah Skipper has a story.
Right now, these orange cones might not look like much, but by the end of the day, each one will mark where a new tree will be planted here on Blennerhassett Island.
It's been a group effort, that is for sure.
On Blennerhassett Island, the sound of recovery is finally taking root.
This is really downtown Marshall's only outdoor communal gathering space.
These days, it's dirt flying, trees moving, and volunteers working side by side to bring this place back to life.
I've spent a lot of time here, and my 3-year-old was calling it Mama's Island for a little while, and I just said, it's not Mama's Island, it's everybody's island.
Jesse Kuntz knows that feeling too.
The world is a heavy place, man.
She runs a Madison County nonprofit.
But doing stuff like this.
But today she's out here with a shovel.
This is, what keeps the hope alive and keeps us being able to wake up the next day. I think maybe a tad this way.
For Jessie, this island isn't just a park, it's a piece of her family.
It was really difficult. I've got 4 children, and we grew up on the island, and they're all grown and in their 20s now, and so to see where again our homeschool co-op met, and we'd have picnics, and we'd have our mom swaps and play dates, everything was gone, and it was really really hard to see your entire town washed away.
Now the island is slowly coming back, and these trees have their own story too.
Yeah, these trees are Helene survivors.
The trees survived flooding at Asheville Greenworks Nursery along the Swannanoa River. Now volunteers are replanting them here to stabilize the riverbank.
They harvested everything that's there and have spent this season trying to get all of that into the ground in places where those trees are going to have the most benefit.
For the people here, this is about a lot more than trees.
This is such a beautiful symbol of resilience and growth and hope and, I don't know, the future.
All good things. And continuing with Helene recovery news, crews have been working nonstop for months to repair lanes of Interstate 40 after parts of the roadway were washed away by the Pigeon River during the storm. It's one of the largest repair projects in recent memory on that road, and work won't finish for another 2.5 years. With a price tag close to $2 billion, crews say a cutting-edge construction technique means the new lanes will be built to last. Ellis Rold takes us to the construction site with the latest updates.
Here in North Carolina along I-40, construction is well underway to rebuild the lanes that were washed into the river during Hurricane Helene. It's the state of North Carolina's biggest construction project to date, fixing parts of I-40 washed away during Helene. They're using roller compacted concrete and a rock mixture to rebuild 2 eastbound lanes about 70 feet into the air, and they're harvesting and making all of the materials on site.
We harvest rock out of there by blowing it up and bringing it down across the bridges in an off-road truck to this crushing site you see behind me.
Crews are blowing up rock from the Pisgah National Forest and hauling it over new bridges made just for this project.
Because of the remote nature of the project, hauling in rock from the local quarries in Tennessee and North Carolina would be extremely expensive and time consuming. So we're saving, roughly 30% in cost and time by getting local material on site and making it here and using it here.
They compact the rock into slabs to build the roadway. They say it's a construction technique meant to last.
The intent of our design is to withstand a similar event such as Helene. So that's hard to map and figure out exactly what that event is, but we put extensive amount of time into using hydraulics and hydrology analysis to figure out what we think will be a large event similar to Helene.
The project won't be done until fall of 2028, but leaders say that's the time it takes to pick up after a 1,000-year storm. Reporting in Clyde, I'm Ellis Rold.
Crews say I-40 in Tennessee was not damaged as badly as portions of that road in North Carolina. That's because the gorge in Tennessee is shaped like a field goal versus the V shape of the gorge in North Carolina. Again, I-40 will continue to have just one lane of traffic in each direction through that construction site until the fall of 2028. I hope those hand signals helped you figure that out. We're hoping that the skies will clear this weekend just in time to see the full moon, which is our second of this month. When we have two full moons in a single month or two full moons during a season, the extra moon is called a blue moon. An important note, the moon will not actually be blue in color when it rises this Saturday evening, and this will also be a micromoon, meaning that the moon is full at its farthest point from Earth during orbit. And a fun fact, blue moons occur about once every 2 to 3 years, meaning that the saying, once in a blue moon, may be more often than most people realize. Now let's get a check of that 7-day forecast and see if we at least have a chance to see that moon on Saturday night. Rain chances stay elevated through the end of this week along with warm and muggy conditions, but as we get into the weekend, we might start to see those rain chances tapering off just a little bit as some slightly drier and slightly cooler air begins to move into the region. We're hoping that if that pattern actually ends up verifying, we would get some slightly cooler and drier conditions with lower rain chances as we move through the first week of June. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, you can get the latest forecast and watch our 24/7 live radar anytime with the WBIR app. You can download the app for free and watch on your TV.